biology and exploration of nourishment would say, oh, that's poison, it's sugar, and it's spun sugar, and therefore it's no good. The thing is, food, as with everything else, we have to get to that we have to allow the state of knowing that we already are everything outpictured. And pleasure, the third one of the yogic flowers and fruit, the kama, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. The third one is or they call it aims in yoga philosophy, but I don't see it as an aim. I see it as a natural state. It is already the case, so you have to allow it to flower rather than aim towards it, because that also is a separative way of speaking about it. So the thing is, when you get into referring to the act of eating or anything, in fact, but we're talking about eating, nourishing, you end up into energizing the language of separation. If food is simply enjoyment, like walking out into a field and smelling the fresh grass and feeling the breeze and the blue sky and the sky and the trees, all the different plants, the little daisies, or looking at the stars, or whatever it is, it's like if the let go happens and the recognition or the realization, the making it real, then everything is enjoying itself. Everything is light refracting on light. So everything in consciousness is already automatically, unconsciously enjoying itself. And if we look at the act of eating as full digestion happens with pleasure, if you eat something strategically, well, I must eat another lettuce today, or 2 glasses of green smoothie, or whatever it is, and you don't really want it. If you love it, fine. If you don't really, and you'd rather say, well, I don't actually feel hungry at the moment, I'd like to have an ice cream later on, for example, whatever. Everything can be nourishing. I have played with this too, because I know it to be the case, but playing with it. And I mean, I don't like sweet things very much. I don't really reach for them a lot. But sometimes eating an ice cream with absolute deep, deep pleasure, I mean, really, really lovely, creamy, organic, something delicious. And that is enough for the day because of the amount of pleasure. And it's the amount of pleasure that we get from the food, truly, honestly, rather than what we think about it or what we have learned about it. If you look at and I watch children being fed in India, and in Spain as well, where the mother would just push food into the mouth. Minja, that's Catalan, for eat. Or in India, little balls of rice and push it in. And then you see the child wandering around, it automatically reaches for a bit of raw carrot because that's what it feels like. And eating balls of cooked rice is it's an acquired thing, So if we can make every act of consuming anything that is to eat, I'm going to talk about other forms of nourishment in a minute, but if we can consume everything as a sacred puja, as a sacred offering, as an act of communion, becoming one with, merging, like this thing I said about the beginning about knowing. A man went, in the Bible you see a lot, and Lot went into his chamber and knew his wife. It's the merging with, the becoming one with. So if there is, when there is real appreciation of the act of communion, consciousness of what it is, to whatever level you have realized. I mean, candy floss is as good as anything, or living light, or love, or whatever you want. But these are words. It's the feeling together with the pleasure and you only need, need is not the word. You are satisfied sometimes with just a taste.
Mm-hmm.
And you go, oh yeah. Did you ever read, I think it was C.S. Lewis, yes, the Space Trilogy?
No.
No, okay, well, it's not what, I mean, it's reading if you like it, but there's one little bit where Arthur Ransom was the name of the protagonist, the hero, and he ends up taken to Perilandra, which is Venus, by an Eldil, which is an archangel of the planet, to rescue or to save Venus before the fall. Okay, so there's a fall. Anyway, they land on a piece of ground. It's nighttime, so they go to sleep. And in the morning, they realize that what they're lying on is a floating island. And there beside them, they feel hungry. So, the island goes up and down with the waves. It's always surfing the ocean. It's a beautiful analogy of life. That's why I like him, not so much the story, which is lovely, but these little snippets he gives us, descriptors. So there's a tree growing there, and there's some beautiful looking fruit, and the three of them are there. One of them reaches out and picks a fruit, and okay, let's taste this. And it is so delicious that he shares it with the other two. And it's absolutely exquisite. They've never tasted anything like it. So, of course, what do we do, human beings? Oh, let's have another one. And the second one doesn't taste quite so good. So they throw it down and say, well, perhaps it was a bit off, that one. They try a third one. It's disgusting. So it's like that. Oh, they're being conditioned to that state. And it's so beautiful. If we say create a sacred puja, a sacred communion every time, and we have time and we have the attention to make it into maybe lay a little beautiful cloth or a pretty knife and fork or a nice glass or just something. Doesn't have to be a full-scale banquet, but something to honor that you are going to perform the hieros gamos, the sacred marriage, the communion of conscious and unconscious. And you do that for a very few days, you will find that all sorts of hitches with food start to fade. That thing is remembering and loving the practice. But just to do it tantrically, to eat. I've got a little piece that I might send you called Tantric Raspberry, about eating a raspberry, about putting in your mouth and letting all the little pixels melt and merging with the essence. So it becomes you, but it doesn't become you strategically. It becomes the living light or the living consciousness that it is, merges with you in a sacred communion. And it's fun. It doesn't have to be serious. See, I'm speaking about it as a sacred communion. And I mean, people think of that as like, well, maybe you used to go to church. And it's not like that. It's like, oh, wow. Look at this. Just sit and look at the little raspberry with all those little cells. I used to call them little pixels, and they melt in the mouth. And you would automatically condition yourself to eat, just to consume just the best. And if you eat that with that contemplation, which is not difficult to play with, if you just put attention on what it is and have that intention to experience it. So eating becomes, a sacred act. And of course, there are other ways as well of knowing that you already are fully nourished.
I've had a lot of difficulty with this part of my life. And it's because I have Rahu in the second house. So I know the contracted state all too well. Like, obviously, I do know the very open state, and what you're referring to makes complete sense to me. And I remember being at a talk once, and there was a panel discussion about a movie about health and food and nutrition especially. And one lady